The pardons of the violent criminals on January 6th is unacceptable, except for the fact that it was super obvious that he was going to do it.
Okay, Andrew, your response.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of problems here. So the first problem is these were not violent criminals who were released. These were political prisoners who were released. What happened is there was no fair application of the law whatsoever. These guys were being tried in D.C. There was a political witch hunt. We have more evidence every single day which provides for that. And why these guys are busy now complaining and showing us, oh, down here on the border, we have a mom crying because she might be separated from her kid. Nobody's commenting on the fact that we have a ton of families that just got reunited. And on behalf of all of the Wilsons of the world, welcome home, January 6ers. It's guys like this that wanted to put you away in a dark hole, absent due process, and throw away the key. These were not violent criminals. By the way,
well, hang on. Okay, but Andrew, hang on. Let me just stop you there. So I actually interviewed one of the protesters, Jacob, who was the QAnon shaman guy. And I also had a Capitol police officer who'd been working that day. And what they both agreed, very interestingly, was that they both condemned the violence against police officers that day. So if you can have one of the protesters who've just been pardoned concede that the violence that was perpetrated by some of the protesters was wrong, unacceptable, and should be condemned, why would you categorize it as non-violent?
Well, I didn't categorize it as non-violent. I said these are not violent criminals, which is how it's being
But if you're
framed.
perpetrating violence against police officers, it is, isn't it?
What? How many? A few? A couple? This guy on May 30th of 2020, the White House was under siege. It was attacked. Over 100 Secret Service agents injured. They were burning down stations. This guy said, oh, well, Trump had to go hide out in his bunker. Can you imagine if the roles were reversed and Donald Trump came out and was like, oh, AOC had to go hide. Oh, these politicians had to go hide. He doesn't care about political violence. The left doesn't care about political violence at all. They'll use it when it's expedient for them. They always do. Pointing to a couple of bad actors at this thing and saying all of them have to be thrown away. And, the key thrown away with them is insanity. And no, I don't think so. I think it's a miscategorization to frame all of them as violent criminals. And that's
they
exactly
weren't all violent at all. I mean,
that's what he was doing. That's what he was framing it, though.
Yeah, no, listen, I don't, and Cenk, I do not agree with that. I don't think all the 1,500 were violent. In fact, we know for a fact they weren't. A lot of them were not convicted in violence.
Yeah, I didn't say that at all.
You did say that.
So, look, no, all right, whatever, dude. So on the Young Turks, we've been super clear about this. And as always, we're the one guys setting people who are fair. You'll see both sides do all this extreme stuff like Andrew's doing. So first of all, the people who went to the speech of Donald Trump, a lot of times they get thrown into this. And I have always said, no, that's not fair. They didn't go down to the Capitol. For the people who went to the Capitol, it's an obvious crime to break into the Capitol. And why were they doing that? They were trying to overturn the results of the election. So you could blah, blah, blah on all your talking points, but it's absurdity. Obviously, they were trying to hurt our democracy. They were trying to steal that election. And were some of them violent? Were all of them violent? No. Were some of them violent? Obviously. We have eyes and ears. So you can do all the propaganda you want, but we just watch the tape of them trying to beat the crap out of the cops. I thought you guys cared about cops. I care about crime. I'm against crime. And, we take heat sometimes from the left because they think that crime is a right-wing narrative and doesn't actually exist. Well, the voters just showed you it does exist, and they're pissed about it. But they're also pissed about it when you go beat up cops for Trump. So, look, I'm past it because the American people voted. They put Trump back into office, and that's pretty definitive. I didn't want that, but it happened, right? But if you're going to try to do revisionist history, that these were some patriots who showed up for a picnic, but oh, golly gee, there was a Capitol, so they started to bust in and beat the living crap out of the cops. And oh, he lost the election, but oh no, it was stolen. So they go and try to do a coup attempt. I hate it. I think it's a terrible precedent. And I think every time you guys defend it, you sound absurd, and it sounds like overwhelming, ridiculous propaganda.
Andrew?
Yeah, what it's about is a fair application of law. And there has not been fair application of law here. Cenk himself cannot even do fair application of law. At the same time, he says, oh, they're trying to coup and overthrow the democracy. It's exactly what happened May 30th when they were attacking the White House. They were attacking Secret Service agents. They wanted to get in there, and all he could do was whine about how Trump had to get sent to a bunker. Where was his outrage about the coup d'etat? Where was he when Black Lives Matter was burning down cities?
There was no coup
Nowhere.
on May 30th. It was a protest.
He was saying instead, Cenk, I didn't interrupt you once. Do you think he calmed down for me? So anyway, what's going on, very simply, is that he has the revisionist history. While at the same time, the Democrats are saying, you got to stay home and stay masked up. They're telling other people, go outside, burn down cities, make Chaz chop, a nice free independent zone. I don't know how you could say that that's anything other than an insurrection to say that this is now no longer part of the United States government, have your own armed militia there. The entire 9 yards, May 30th, they attack. And this guy says nothing. Suddenly, J6, though, oh, my God, they're violent extremists. They're going to overthrow democracy. It's all nonsense. It's not fairly applied. He's never fairly applied it. The laws has never been fairly applied to the J6ers. They were tried in D.C., not in front of impartial juries. And here's how our law works. Our law works like this. 1,000 walk free, so one guilty person doesn't spend a day in prison. That is the precedent for our law. That's why they got pardoned, and it's exactly why they should have.
My team had prepared some of your supposedly controversial, inflammatory quotes about women. And I've just read them, and I'm thinking, I think in the Brave New World, I don't find them that controversial. So I'm just going to read one.
I was a very controversial
One is, the only reason femoids hate my wife is because I tell her to get me a beer and she does. That's the kind of thing I say to my wife, and she laughs once she's made my dinner.
Yeah.
And then you say women,
and by the way,
find beds to be...
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Doesn't the beer taste better when your wife brings it to you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And then you said this, and Cenk, I'm interested in whether you agree with this or not. Women find beds to be a centerpiece of decoration. Men find beds to be tools for sleeping. It serves no purpose. I mean, I agree. Cenk?
Beds. He said beds, Cenk. So like men, when we look at beds, we look at them as tools for sleeping in. Women actually look at them as decorations.
He's right.
As well.
Cenk?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's some truth to that. Of course, not all women are the same. Not all men are the same. But my mom would do curtains that didn't cover the windows at all because they looked great.
So here's my point, Cenk. Here's my point.
Exactly.
You know what's interesting? Here's my point. We've reached a point where Andrew Wilson's deeply inflammatory, controversial quotes about women can actually now be laughed at in the tone that I believe they were originally expressed, which is, you know what?
Of course.
It's just a bit of fun. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Women and men can tell little light-hearted jokes about each other, playing up all kinds of stereotypes, and it doesn't matter. People don't need to be shamed,
all the time.
cancelled, vilified, fired from their
Yes.
jobs. We can actually have fun, and then we can actually, by doing that, isolate the people who really deserve to be isolated, who are despicable pieces of work. So, Andrew, great to have you back on Uncensored. Are you remotely apprehensive about unleashing Mrs. Wilson on the world like this?
No, but she is the only Wilson on the panel that I claim. I'm just pointing that out.
Everyone seems to be either called Wilson or Emily in this debate, in this two-header. Rachel, welcome to Uncensored. You reached out to me on X and very boldly said, if you want to debate this properly, get me on. You're here. How are you feeling about this?
Well, thank you for having me, Piers, and thank you, Andrew, for unchaining me from the stove just long enough to appear today. I got a day pass from the patriarchy.
Patriarchy is benevolent.
It's so true. Yeah. So I'm very happy to be here. People love to attack my husband via me. I'm like the favorite way to do that. So I thought, why not come on and talk to people myself?
So look, Rachel, let's just cut to the quick. A lot of Andrew's critics, not me, a lot of his critics say that he's an obvious, blatant misogynist. He thinks all women should be, kept at home, working away on the stove, the housework, whatever it may be, and know their place in life. You are actually married to him. You've been subject of mockery inadvertently through the last debate we had about this, for having to endure being his wife. What is it like being married to Andrew Wilson?
Well, it's pretty awesome. I mean, he's hilarious. He's a really smart guy. He's very charming. And most of all, he's a great dad and a great husband. And I share his worldview. So I would agree. In fact, I would say I would probably be the more bitter misogynist out of the two of us. If you really had to like pick one, it would probably be me. So
really, why do you say that?
I just think that feminism has absolutely destroyed so much of what I hold dear in life, and it's held me back more than it's helped me. It's one of the reasons I started looking into the history and investigating it for myself. And I think it's just created a world where we now have a two-income economy. And for women like me who do want to prioritize motherhood, it makes it extremely hard. It just makes it financially difficult. I face tons of social pressure. Had my first daughter at 20, wanted to stay home. Everyone around me, even the so-called Christian conservative women, told me it was a terrible idea. You can't do that. You have to bring the baby to daycare. You're going to put yourself at risk. You know, your husband's going to hurt you. You're going to be abused if you don't have your own money and your own career. And I think it's backwards. I think it's the most inefficient, stupid thing we've ever come up with. And that in the future, people will look back at the feminist experiment as a goofy time in history where we tried this wild experiment that failed miserably, and thank God it's over.
Wow. Okay. Well, Clementine Ford, I'm sure that you agree with every word of that, don't you?
Firstly, I'm very glad that you're happily married. It's great. You know, a lot of women are not happily married and they find it very difficult to leave marriages, particularly because of the financial strain. So good for you. I do think that your historical understanding of feminism is extremely skewed. The idea that somehow we've only created a two-income household because feminism has tried to destroy the world is historically inaccurate, in large part. Well, firstly, you're also talking about feminism from your very, and when I say limited, I'm not trying to insult you, but the limited perspective of feminism in America and the understanding of the economy in America. It's not taking into account the global reality of the fact that women have always worked, women still continue to work. Women, for the most part, produce the majority of the world's underpaid, if, you know, drastically underpaid labor. When you talk about a two-income household being somehow instituted by feminism, you're failing to take into account that even in America, you know, the kind of the glamorization of this golden age of marriage in the 1950s to the early 1960s, which the marriage historian Stephanie Coots calls the long decade. This coincided with an increase in women in the workplace. So it's not as if there was this golden age where women where married women, weren't working. For a lot of that, actually, the labor that is required to support the middle class has always been relied on for poor and disenfranchised women, largely in America, black women. All
right. Look,
for a start.
Let
me just finish.
Well, we all have to speed things up a little bit.
And the economy, the downturn in the economy, the boom that happened after the Second World War was unsustainable. It was a wonderful time between around 1940 to 1970 for white working class men in particular, and then it began to decline
I have a question
rapidly.
for you.
One of the reasons why women had to go into the workforce was because they had to help support their families.
Okay, I have a question for you, Clementine. It's a very simple question, but I think it'll be an interesting question to ask you. What is a woman?
Piers, I'm not going down the path of debating trans women with you.
I didn't mention trans women. I asked you what a woman is.
Okay, I'll tell you. I know that because this is your tactic. This is what you do. What is a woman? I'll tell you what a woman is.
It shouldn't be controversial.
I'll tell you what a woman is. A woman is someone who has at least at one point in her life felt scared of a man.
Sorry?
But you guys never want to talk about that.
Wait, hang on.
You guys never want to talk about that.
So any man who's ever felt afraid of another man is a woman?
No.
What are you talking
That's
about?
not what I'm saying.
This is exactly why you're wearing that shirt that says repeal. You should put the 19th under it. It's unbelievable. What are you talking about? A woman, anybody who has ever at one point been afraid of a man, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Do you have an actual argument here?
Would you let me finish speaking? Or do you
how long is it going to take for you to finish? How long is it going to take for you to finish?
Yes, do you really just invite people on your show to be interrupted like this? Even women who make more money than their partners or their spouses tend to do more unpaid domestic labor. This is the
who did most of the domestic chores?
In my house?
Yeah.
Me.
You did?
Me.
Okay, and Rachel, who does most of them in yours?
That's the reality for
hang on.
For most
Rachel,
women
who does the domestic stuff in your house, Rachel?
I do absolutely all of it. And the thing I want to say to
So you're very
Clementine
similar.
is,
I mean, it seems to me you're both.
I care far less about women's fulfillment in careers than I care about children and how they're being raised. And I want her to justify to me why we should be paying low-wage daycare workers to raise our children rather than doing it ourselves. How does it make sense to take your duty of motherhood and simply put it on a different random woman? How does that system make sense? Why should we tell women to do that?
If you would like to stay at home and raise your children, that's
You're not answering
totally
my
fine.
You're not answering the question.
My question
Answer
is,
the
how is
question.
it good for children
it's a question
for
of
them
choice.
to be raised by
it's a question of choice.
No, it's not a
actually
question of
not
choice.
worse.
No.
It's not worse
Why
for
is it
children
better outcomes?
to be
Why
raised
is
by
it
working
better?
mothers. That's
Why is
also
it better?
the facts back that up. There is no
No, they
study that
don't.
suggests
There's
that women
no
who
facts.
work
Listen, lady,
raise
there are
children
no
who are less
facts on
happy. That is not true.
There are no facts on planet Earth that back up that single mother households have better outcomes. That's one. Two,
Or that raising
outsourcing your
children in daycare is better.
hang on. Let me finish, lady. If you outsource the raising of your children, you're already making yourself a single mother. Just so you know. Here's what's going on. Just so that you understand.
Are you a single father because your wife raises your children for you?
Lady.
Excuse me, don't call me lady.
Can you let me finish?
Lady.
Can
I have a
anybody
name.
finish a point? Can anybody finish a point? Or
I don't know.
only
Do you have a point?
Are
You don't
only
seem to
you
be
allowed
making
to?
one.
I'm trying to make one. So
You don't
anyway,
seem
if
to
you
be making a
outsource-
point, Andrew.
If you outsource your children's raising to strangers, answer Rachel's question and tell her how that makes more sense than having the child raised by their own biological mother. Actually answer.
Well, in my case, it makes more sense because I need to make money to pay my bills to raise my child.
It's
But in many other
counterintuitive.
families, it makes...
What if you
in many
depended
other
on your
families,
husband's
it makes-
income?
Do you see the problem of
Now
how we
it's my
ended
turn
up
to
here?
finish. Now it's my turn to finish. But actually, again, if you knew what you were talking about, if you actually read anything about the data on these things rather than just reaching into your gut.
Well, The Guardian summed up the general tone of the reporting with a headline that said, from the police to the Prime Minister, how adolescence is making Britain face up to toxic masculinity. But is it really? Andrew Wilson, let me start with you, because look, I've got three sons, 31, 27, 24. I think I brought them up to respect women, to not behave in a misogynist way, and to behave in a pretty decent way generally. But I'm also aware that they've grown up in an era when the likes of Andrew Tate and others have become increasingly dominant in the way that a lot of impressionable young men start to think and view women. And for all that Andrew Tate can say that is positive about getting fit and being successful and confident and so on, there's indisputably a hardcore streak of misogyny that runs through his veins, which I think has been quite damaging to young men. So I'm not all in either way here, but I can certainly see the arguments.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that this. So I watched the show, and it just goes through a typical feminine view, right? So all of these things are always through the prism of the feminine. So young boys, they don't do well in school. They don't do well in school because it's all programmed for the feminine. Stay still, fold your hands, right? Be quiet. Boys are rambunctious. They like to beat each other up. They like to be mischievous. They like to break things. They like to do that kind of stuff. There's no outlet for them to do that stuff. Their teachers are all women, right? There's basically all masculinity is now considered toxic. Basically all of it. The same women who are getting their double shot of espresso on the way over to the school they're about to teach at, they're 24 years old. Sometimes they're banging their own students, right? Hilariously enough. And then these people go out to Parliament. The same women will go to Parliament. They vote to send men off to war to stab each other in the face with bayonets. And you're concerned about toxic masculinity. It cracks me up. It's like the brutal savagery of men is a necessary precondition for society to exist. And we just kind of pretend like it's not. And this show should actually be an indictment on the feminine rather than the masculine, because basically masculinity is just punished everywhere, all the time, nonstop. It's no wonder guys like Andrew Tate get so famous in these spaces. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is everything must be feminine, tone policing, nonsense like this. It's ridiculous.
All right, James Barr, you were laughing, but I don't think I'd enjoy
crazy.
what you're hearing.
No, I mean, I don't think you've seen the show. Episode 2 is shot entirely in a school. I didn't see one of the female teachers drinking a double shot of espresso at all. None of the teachers were flirting with students. There were male teachers as well. I don't think you're describing the show here. I think you're describing your own insecurities or agenda.
Yeah, so this doesn't contend with the argument. Like, do you understand that I'm making an argument, an indictment of society itself based around my ideas that I'm seeing from this show? That's what I'm actually doing. So if you could contend with the fact that male savagery is necessary for the security of a nation and that women will indeed vote in the future in parliaments to send men off to war to stab each other in the face at 18 years old with bayonets, perhaps you can contend with that. Before we start, getting into, well, tone policing is actually good and toxic masculinity is actually bad. It's like, I think there needs to be a little bit more toxic masculinity, or what you consider to be toxic masculinity.
Well, great. Good for you.
Nothing.
I'm glad you think so.
Nothing.
No, I mean, I just don't need to argue with that because
you just unlocked. You just unlocked. You got nothing.
You're making up
you
an
do
agenda
seem
that
unusually
I've not said
that,
I've not said anything. I haven't literally said nothing about
James, you were literally rendered silent. Like you had no way of responding.
I'll tell you what, you can't argue with a completely illogical argument that has, like, I've not made any of the
It's a logical argument. You may not agree with it.
I've not made any of the comments.
He's making a perfectly logical argument.
That you are firing at me. None of those comments are things I've said or believe in.
All right, I want to bring Tommy in, because Tommy, you've got a very interesting perspective, I think. You've talked about something different. You call it the pussification of men, which is a great phrase. I'd love you to just explain what you mean by that. But also, you're not a fan of Andrew Tate or the influence he has. So that makes you, I think, an interesting commentator in this area. So just explain, first of all, the pussification of men.
All right, Piers. Well, I think, and I can't see you all, so forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but I think I'm the only female on this panel.
Correct.
So I'm really anxious to weigh in. Okay, so I think over the last probably 10 years, there has been what I call the pussification of men. It was everything should be about your emotions and your feelings, and men were emasculated, and this whole concept of toxic masculinity warped the minds of a lot of young men. And they felt masculine, they wanted to be masculine, but society was telling them they should be softer, that it was being toxically masculine if you wanted to play sports and chop wood and go to war. And so men were so emasculated and so beat down that then there was this revolution of what was actually toxic masculinity, the Tate brothers and others, which I feel as a female that doesn't represent true masculinity. That to me represents douchebaggery. And as a woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money. I see that as being actually masculine. That's like the man that I grew up with, my dad. But what we're seeing now is these young men who look at Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers, and they see somebody who's just quite frankly a douchebag and disrespects women. And because they've been so emasculated, they're like, oh, great, that's a manly man. But that's not right either. So at some point, I think we'll go back to maybe meeting in the middle here. You can be a man who has feelings and emotions, but you can also go to war and protect and defend your family. I'm hoping we can get back there. But the two extremes right now, they're confusing men, and quite frankly, they're leaving women with few choices. And that's the real tragedy here.
You see, I completely agree with you, but Andrew, you were shaking your head quite vigorously. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just more feminine or feminist nonsense, ultimately. And the covert feminism in society is big, especially on the conservative side. So here's what happens, right? Women need to have feminine virtues for men to be pursuing masculine virtues, for you to say things like, well, men, what I want is for men to protect me and I want men to make money. Well, that's great. What that ends up doing is it gives you a set of privilege in society. What do men get? What do men get for doing that for you? What are we getting from women for doing that? Are we getting chaste virgins on our wedding night? No, we're not getting chaste virgins on our wedding night. Are we getting women of great virtue? No, we're not getting women of great virtue. The idea of courtly love is supposed to be done for women of great virtue. Where are they? Well, they're nowhere. And so in modernity, in society, when female conservative influencers say this, it's actually a form of covert feminism. They're saying, I want privilege in society, right? But what is it women are giving to men to get it? What are they giving them? Tell me.
Well,
Piers, can I please chime in here?
Yes, you can. And then James can, and I'll come to you, Sean.
No, I would love to. I love this whole thing of like, if you're a female conservative and you don't believe that men should be douchebags, that all of a sudden you're a covert feminist. Call me a feminist. I really don't give one crap one way or another, but I can tell you this. A lot of these men, these podcast hosts on the right that like to think of themselves as these big masculine men, and what am I getting out of it? I can tell you this.
There's that feminism.
All right, I believe I'm a woman of virtue,
coming
right?
out.
Yeah, there's the feminism. Oh, and then you're interrupting me too,
Didn't
which
take
is great.
long,
I let
did it?
you
Didn't
talk.
take
It's my
long,
turn.
did it?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak
So,
over me?
yeah, I don't care if you call me. I don't really care if you call me a
strong,
feminist.
independent woman.
Yeah. Yeah. You're actually interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you when you were spewing your bullshit. So now it's my turn. Okay.
You mean the truth?
Like I said before. So I believe there we go again. Piers, I'm a woman of virtue. I happen to be independently successful. I have a husband who's not only a former professional athlete, but is currently a professional baseball coach. So is he not a masculine man? I mean, I'm confused here. What's your concept of a masculine man? Mine is a man who respects me.
Yeah, that misses the point, though. Like, you're still not contending with the argument that I'm making.
What's your point?
I'm saying inside of society, right this second, right, masculinity is not only punished, but also women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement? What are we getting out of this arrangement? Can you tell me?
I mean,
Well,
as I
I would
was going to
argue
answer
that
a
men
second ago,
innately
Well,
should
I
be
don't wanna
protectors and
interrupt you.
providers.
Hang on one second. Let Tommy
Most
respond.
men are born that way.
Let Tommy respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Jez. And then Sean,
most
you've
men
been
are-
waiting patiently. So
most men are born to be protectors and providers. I can't imagine my dad saying, you know what, to my mom, you know what, I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate. Real men are protectors and providers, and they marry women who hopefully
great.
have
A
some
woman telling
virtue,
us what
but
real
also
men
bring a
are
lot to
again.
the
Great.
table as well, that are great mothers, great wives, caretakers of the home. There's nothing wrong with being a traditional wife and mother. You're misunderstanding me if you think that I think that women should just be out doing whatever they want. I think that there are gender roles that should be respected. But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector, and a provider. If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
Yeah, so you have nothing. So you have nothing.
But we'll discuss in a moment whether Andrew Wilson is a real man.
Piers, I offer nothing. I offer nothing.
You offered me a lot of things, Tommy. That's why I always love having you on the show. You know that. Let's go to a real man, James Barr.
Thank you. I do see myself as a man, and I know that you'll be looking at me thinking, well, you're not. You're wearing makeup. You're wearing colourful clothes. Like, look at me. I'm really camp. My nails are painted.
I mean, they are worrying signs.
You're sat there smoking a cigarette. I'd love to get a vape out and start drinking a beer, pints with the lads, just connect with you over that. I think that you have some insane opinions on what women are meant to do for you. It's crazy that you don't appreciate that a woman actually gave birth to you. Like, she gave you a womb for 9 months and then looked after you, I would hope, for the beginning of your life. And you're sat there going, what do women owe men? Women don't owe men anything. No one owes you anything. You have your own life.
Do you understand that if you make an argument and you say that
I've
women are
watched
supposed
your
to be
seminar on how to win an argument.
in a position, if women are supposed to be in a position of privilege where men do A, B, C, and D for them, and then I ask, well, what duties do women have? And you say, well, nothing.
No one said
right?
that
And then you
men
wonder,
need...
why are men checking out?
I
I don't know why men are checking out. I don't get it.
You just
That's silly, man.
All right,
That's
let me
a
bring
silly
it.
argument.
All right, let me.